Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Important Locations for Map-Based Question. This initiative has been brought to you by Aptiplus Academy for Civil Services, and I am Shayak Datta, the Faculty for Geography and Environment at Aptiplus Academy for Civil Services. In this initiative, we are looking at all those important places which have been there in the news and hence which becomes important for the map-based questions for the upcoming UPSC Prelims 2020. As all of you are aware that every year we have around 5 to 6 questions which are based either on the world map or on the India map. So around 10 to 12 marks are there every year in every year's prelims paper with regards to map based questions. So in the previous videos, we have looked at different parts of the earth. For example, we have looked at Europe, we have looked at South America, we have looked at West Asia as well. So like this, we have also looked at Central Asia and the Caucasus region. Today, we'll look at another part of the earth and see all those places which have been there in the news from this particular part. So today, our focus will be on Southeast Asia. Okay, so today we will be focusing on Southeast Asia. So when we say Southeast Asia, we are looking at this entire part of the earth, that is all these countries, for example, starting from India, Pakistan and Central Asia to the west, all the way up to the Pacific Ocean on the east. So all the countries which lie in this particular part, they make up the part which we call as Southeast Asia. So this particular area is very significant, and also we get to see that especially due to the presence of countries like China, presence of countries like Russia, Japan, South and North Korea, this particular area has been in the news for many reasons. So it becomes important for us that we study this portion very thoroughly and in details. So in this particular session, we are going to look at the important places from this particular part of the earth. So let us see the first important place, and that is Vladivostok. So Vladivostok, it is present in the far east part of Russia, and it is the largest port city on the Pacific. First of all, let us see where this Vladivostok lies. So I believe over here you will be able to see where is Vladivostok. See over here. This is Vladivostok. Okay, so this particular area is Vladivostok, which is present in Russia, that is the eastern part of Russia, near to its border with North Korea. So this Vladivostok, it is present in the far eastern part of Russia. It is the largest port city of the Pacific. And if we look at the nearby countries, first let us have a look at the nearby countries. So you have Vladivostok, and we have Russia, and we have China, you have Mongolia as well, North Korea, Japan, South Korea. These are the countries which lie nearby. Not necessarily the neighboring countries, but we are looking at those countries which lie nearby. So as you can see, Mongolia, Japan, China, North Korea, these are the countries which are lying near this area, that is Vladivostok. Now, why this particular area was in the news is because we get to see the fifth meeting of the Eastern Economic Forum, the fifth meeting of the Eastern Economic Forum, and the 20th India-Russia Annual Summit. It takes place every year over here. Okay? The fifth meeting of the Eastern Economic Forum, also the India-Russia Annual Summit, we get to see every year it takes place, and the 20th and the 5th meeting, they also took place over here. So 20th meeting of the India-Russia Annual Summit and the 5th meeting of the Eastern Economic Forum, that also has taken place over here in Vladivostok. So Vladivostok, as we have learned, it is Russia's largest port city on the Pacific Ocean, and the Far East is the easternmost part of Russia. Now, why this Vladivostok is important? This Vladivostok is important, or the economic significance of Vladivostok is because this particular area, it is very rich in minerals. So it's a mineral rich area. We get to see huge quantities of diamond, gold, coal, all of these are present. Okay, huge quantities of diamond, gold, coal, all of it is present over here in Vladivostok. Right now we learned that the fifth meeting of the Eastern Economic Forum had taken place over here, and every year it takes place here only. So we also need to know, okay, what is this Eastern Economic Forum? The Eastern Economic Forum, what is the main objective? It is meant for the purpose of encouraging foreign investment in the Russian Far East. It is meant for encouraging investment, foreign investment mainly, in the Russian Far East area, plus to promote cooperation or to ensure that there is more cooperation in that region of the Pacific Ocean. So as you can understand, this particular area, this Vladivostok area, so this Vladivostok area is actually lying in an like the area is very remote in nature, and because it is very remote, so we get to see there has not been too much of development over here. The economic opportunities or the employment opportunities are also very limited for people over here. So this Eastern Economic Forum is held every year. The main objective is to attract business to this particular area, to attract investment, and that to foreign investment in this Russian Far East area, to ensure that there is more development of this area. Okay, so the Eastern Economic Forum, it is meant for the purpose of encouraging foreign investment in the Russian Far East, plus to ensure that there is more cooperation in that region of the Pacific Ocean. We also get to see that the Russian president and the Japanese premier, they have attended this forum since its beginning. From the very beginning itself, we get to see the Russian president and the Japanese premier, they have been attending this particular forum since the time it has started. So who had started this? It was conceptualized by Vladimir Putin in 2015. And from then on, every year we get to see this Eastern Economic Forum is being held. Now, why Japan? Because Japan lies over here. Okay, as you can see over here, Vladivostok is present here, and right beside it, across the Sea of Japan, you have the country of Japan. So the Premier of Japan has been attending this particular summit from the time this summit has begun. So first area that we had to concentrate on, that we had to know about, is Vladivostok. Next area that you should be aware of is the Sakhalin oil field in Russia. The Sakhalin oil field in Russia. Now, first of all, where is this Sakhalin oil field? Again, we have to look at the far eastern part of Russia, and here you can see, okay, this particular area is Russia. Here you have the islands of Japan, and right near this island of Japan, you have the Sakhalin Island. So over here in the Sakhalin Island, around this area, you have the Sakhalin oil field. So basically, we are referring to this particular area. Okay, this area is the Sakhalin Island. So the Sakhalin oil field, around this area, there is sufficient amount of crude oil which is present. So here we get to see that ONGC Videsh, which is another arm of ONGC. So ONGC Videsh, it is one of the partners who is exploring for oil in this area. So ONGC Videsh, this arm of ONGC is doing explorations over here. So basically it's like they are prospecting for mineral oil over here. Okay, so Sakhalin oil field, remember the area, look at this particular area present near the Sea of Okhotsk. Okay, present near the Sea of Okhotsk. It's an island, and nearby the Russian mainland region, it is the Amur area. Okay, the Amur area. Also over here you can see there is another part of Russia which is also called as the Kamchatka Peninsula. The Kamchatka Peninsula is present over here, and below that, what do we have? We have the islands of Japan. Moving on to the next important thing that you need to know about, that is the Northern Sea Route. The Northern Sea Route. Now let us first have a look at this Northern Sea Route, and then we will see. Okay, now you see, if anybody wanted to travel from the Far East, that is, let's say Yokohama, which is in Japan, if somebody wanted to travel all the way to Europe, let's say Rotterdam, okay, so somebody traveling from Yokohama to Rotterdam, earlier they had to take this route. This is the existing route that you have. Okay, so this blue line is representing the existing route that is there. So you can see somebody, if they wanted to travel from the Far East, that is Yokohama, let's say from Japan, then they would have to pass through these areas through the Strait of Malacca, through to the south of India, and then through the Arabian Sea, finally through the Red Sea and the Suez Canal, through the Mediterranean Sea. They would pass through the Strait of Gibraltar, then through the English Channel, and they will be able to reach the western part of Europe. But now we get to see, so why was this the case? Why such a long route? Mainly the long route was because this particular area, that is the Arctic Ocean, that used to remain frozen, and hence it was unoperational. I mean, it was not possible for any ship to pass through this area. But now we get to see because of things like global warming, climate change, etc., slowly the ice of this Arctic Ocean is melting, and that has resulted in opening up of the Arctic, and hence it has become easier for ships to take this particular route to reach from the Far East to the Western Europe area. Okay? This particular route is called as the Northern Sea Route. So over here from the diagram itself, you can understand what is the advantage of this Northern Sea Route. Okay, the advantage of this Northern Sea Route. So from Rotterdam to Yokohama, you see the number of days that has reduced by a great extent, or the distance has also got reduced by a great extent. Similarly to Shanghai as well. So let us first see which are the areas through which this Northern Sea Route will pass. Okay, Northern Sea Route. So it starts from Yokohama, and then you pass through the Bering Strait. Where is the Bering Strait? So this particular area it is passing through. This is the Bering Strait area. Okay, it passes through the Bering Strait. From the Bering Strait, it will pass along the Arctic Ocean, like we have seen. Kara Sea, okay, one of the northern seas. Barents Sea, another very northern sea, and then finally it will reach Rotterdam. So the entire distance will be around 13,700 kilometers. The entire distance from Yokohama all the way up to Rotterdam is around 13,700 kilometers via the Northern Sea Route. On the other hand, if you go via the Southern Sea Route, okay, if you go via the Southern Sea Route, then from Rotterdam here, Southern Sea Route, as you can understand, is represented by this blue line, and the red line, it represents the Northern Sea Route. So 13,700 kilometers all the way from Yokohama to Rotterdam. But let's say earlier, or the existing route that people take, that starts from Rotterdam and it passes through all these places. So first of all, which places? So it will pass along English Channel, then through the Strait of Gibraltar. It will enter into the Suez Canal. Then it has to pass through the Red Sea. After passing through the Red Sea, there is a narrow strait, as we have learned earlier, which is called as the Bab el Mandab. From Bab el Mandab, it will move out through the Gulf of Aden, and from the Gulf of Aden, as you can see, it will enter into the Arabian Sea mainly. From the Arabian Sea, it will go through the Indian Ocean area, and finally it will go through the Strait of Malacca. From the Strait of Malacca, it will be able to enter the South China Sea, then go to the East China Sea. Finally, you will reach Yokohama. This entire distance from Rotterdam via the Southern Sea Route to reach Yokohama, it is around 20,900 kilometers long. So if anybody wants to go from Yokohama to Rotterdam or vice versa via the existing route, the distance will be around 20,900 kilometers. On the other hand, if anybody follows this Northern Sea Route, which is nowadays being followed, so it will ultimately result in a reduction of almost 7,000 kilometers, as you can see, because this is around 13,700 kilometers. So on the whole, Northern Sea Route plus Southern Sea Route, the entire route will be around somewhere around this 34,600 kilometers. Russia has recently launched a nuclear-powered Arctic icebreaker. Arctic icebreaker means it's a ship, and this ship is supposed to break the ice of the Arctic Ocean in order to allow other ships to pass through this area. So Russia, it has recently launched a nuclear-powered Arctic icebreaker whose name is Ural. Now that is based on the Ural Mountains. Where are the Ural Mountains? I think in our, yes, over here. You can see the Ural Mountains is a significant physical feature present in Russia. This is the Ural Mountains. Okay? So Russia, it has launched an Arctic icebreaker whose name is also Ural. The name of the ship, they have named it as the Ural, and Russia wants to ensure all year round navigability and facilitate the northern sea route in the Arctic Ocean. This is what Russia wants to do. It wants to ensure that this northern sea route remains operational throughout the year. And another thing is also there, okay, due to the richness of minerals, where in the Arctic Ocean, due to the richness of minerals, 80% of the oil plus natural gas, all of these will be found over here in the Arctic Ocean. Okay? So basic thing is that okay, Russia wants to ensure that this Arctic Ocean can be opened up, navigability can be increased, and it should become operational throughout the year. It should remain operational throughout the year. This is the northern sea route which passes through the Arctic Ocean. So we have looked at the northern sea route. Please remember the places through which the northern sea route will pass. Okay, Bering Strait, and then Kara Sea, and then we'll also have the over here we will have the Barents Sea, and from Barents Sea ultimately it will go over here in Rotterdam. Next up, we get to see that Russia, apart from having launched a nuclear icebreaker in the Arctic, we also get to see that there's a Russian ship which has a floating nuclear power plant. So Russia has created a ship which is actually a floating nuclear power plant, and its name is Akademik Lomonosov. Akademik Lomonosov is the name of the Russian ship, which is a floating nuclear power plant. So here we have the photograph of the Akademik Lomonosov, and it has been developed by Rosatom. It is a virtually unsinkable ship. Okay? It has been named as Akademik Lomonosov, and we get to see it has set off on its 5,000-kilometer journey through the Arctic waters to reach another area. What is important over here, like so far as UPSC is concerned, they will not be asking in all these details. You're not supposed to remember all these details. What you have to remember is what is this Akademik Lomonosov? It's a Russian ship which has a floating nuclear power plant. That is what you have to remember. This is what UPSC might ask. Okay, next area that we have to focus on are the Kuril Islands. The Kuril Islands, also sometimes referred to as the Kuril Islands. So anyway, Kuril Islands, let's see first, where is this Kuril Islands located? Over here. So here we have the islands of Japan. Here we have, just now we saw, what is the name? We have the Sakhalin Island over here. So this is the Sakhalin Island. These are the Russian islands, the Japanese island. And then the extension over here, we get to see that there's an island arc which is also called as a Kuril Island. Along this Kuril Island, we have the Kuril Trench also located. Okay? We have the Kuril Trench also located over here. So first of all, regarding the Kuril Islands, they are claimed by Japan, but we get to see they have been occupied by Russia. Again, the Kuril Islands, from the diagram itself, you can understand the red colored part is Russia, and the greenish part over here, the deep green part is Japan. Okay? So this Kuril Islands, we get to see it is occupied by Russia, but it is claimed by Japan. And it has been in the news because of its historical legacy. It has been in the news because of its historical legacy. Now it is claimed by Japan, but we get to see it has been occupied by Russia, as it was the successor state of the Soviet Union. Okay, so what actually happened was, this particular area, that is the Kuril Island, it was an area of dispute. There was a dispute which was there earlier between the erstwhile USSR. Erstwhile USSR means the United States of Soviet Russia, which used to exist earlier. So there used to be a dispute between Soviet Russia and Japan, and it is not a it has a very long history. Almost 70 years old dispute was there. Okay, since the time of World War II, this particular area has been disputed. Now, this dispute was between USSR and Japan. Question is, how did Russia get involved? Russia got involved because Russia considers itself to be the successor state of the USSR, the erstwhile USSR. So Russia considers itself to be the successor state of the erstwhile USSR, and hence Russia has also got into a dispute with Japan regarding the sovereignty, or regarding under whose jurisdiction these Kuril Islands come. So basically the Kuril Islands, they are claimed by Japan, but they are occupied by Russia. And despite we get to see the passage of over 70 years, this dispute has still not got resolved. So this dispute is still there despite over 70 years having got passed. This dispute has still not got resolved. Next area that we look at is the Komodo Island. Where is the Komodo Island? Over here, as you can see, this area is the Komodo Island, and it is in Indonesia. So first thing that you have to remember is, where is Komodo Island? Komodo Island is in Indonesia. Now, why it has been named as Komodo Island? It has been named as Komodo Island because over here we get to see a species of reptile which is called as the Komodo dragon. Okay, there is a species of reptile which is called as the Komodo dragon. Now, it is very, very essential that you do not get confused whether this Komodo dragon is actually a dragon, but no, it is more like a lizard. So if you have seen a Komodo dragon, you will be able to understand it looks more like a lizard, like a monitor lizard, but a very big one. Okay? It is called as Komodo dragon. So this is where you find Komodo dragon in the Komodo Island. Now, if we look at Komodo dragons, their IUCN status is vulnerable. So you must be aware that it is this IUCN status of a particular species which helps us to understand what is the status of the species in the wild. So whether the species is doing fine or it is under threat, it is getting endangered, etc., etc. We can understand by looking at its IUCN status. IUCN is the name of an organization. They come up with a particular list of threatened species, and in that list of threatened species, they will have this IUCN status. So vulnerable means it is close to extinction, basically. So the very next step that will be there. So actually, vulnerable is one of the threatened categories. So you have vulnerable, then you have endangered, and then you have critically endangered. Okay, so this is actually vulnerable species, and we get to see, just for its protection, that is the protection of the Komodo dragon, we get to see that people have been relocated from this Komodo Island so that there can be proper conservation done of the Komodo dragon, which is a species. Now, here also I would just like to tell you, like, if you have studied your environment properly, then you will be aware that there are different type of protected areas. So one such protected area that is there, one type of protected area, I would say. So one type of protected area that is there is called as national park. In case of national parks, like wherever you have a national park being declared, that area, there cannot be any kind of human interference. There cannot be any kind of human activities taking place over in such an area. Okay, such an area will be called as a national park. So over here we get to see this area, the entire island has been declared as the Komodo National Park, and hence it is necessary to conserve this particular island in order to be able to preserve the species. So we get to see that people have been moved out or relocated from this island for the conservation of the Komodo dragon. Okay, so if you have not seen a Komodo dragon, just Google the picture and you'll be able to see. So please remember, Komodo Island is in Indonesia. Okay, so we'll look at last topic for the day, and there are many more places, but we'll continue in our next video. So the last topic for the day is it's a new species of snail. Actually, it's a new species of land snail. And what is the name? This is the name, Craspedothropis Greta Thunberg. Okay, Craspedothropis Greta Thunberg. Now, pronunciation is not important. What is important is, remember that Greta Thunberg, just remember this suffix part, that will be more than sufficient. Why? Because this is a new species of land snail. First of all, आपको ये याद रखना है कि this particular term is actually for what? So Craspedothropis Greta Thunberg is actually a new species of land snail. Please remember that it's not the name of a place, etc., etc. It's a name of a new species of land snail. Now, why such a difficult name? Because it has been named after Greta Thunberg. Who is Greta Thunberg? She is a Swedish environmental activist. And this particular new species of land snail, it has been discovered in Brunei. This new species of land snail, it has been discovered in Brunei. Where is Brunei? Over here in Malaysia. Okay. So one part of this particular island is belonging to Indonesia. That part is called as Kalimantan. And there's another part which belongs to Malaysia. So over here we have Brunei. And here we get to see that the discovery of a new species of land snail has been made, and it has been named after the Swedish child environmental activist whose name is Greta Thunberg. So from this diagram, you can remember this is the new species of land snail which has been discovered, and she is Greta Thunberg, the Swedish child environmental activist. Okay. So this was the first part of Southeast Asia, and there are many more places that we have to look at. But then we will continue with this particular discussion in the part 2, the second part of the video lectures on Southeast Asia. So I hope you have liked this particular video, and if you have done so, then please like the video, please comment in the comment section, and please share with your friends and all those who are preparing for UPSC. And please subscribe to Apti Plus Academy for Civil Services YouTube channel for more such informative videos. And till the next time, stay safe, study hard, and thank you so much.
I'm an icon, man. And my girl about a 10. I should fuck her in the Benz.